want to talk about a few specific things that I do when I'm structuring the lesson with a young child. The first thing that I try to do in setting up that initial experience for the young child is I want to set a really clear boundary. I want them to walk into that lesson and have it be a little bit of a mysterious world, something that they're intrigued by and also something that is really set apart from their ordinary interaction. What that means is I'm going to have a little bit of a higher boundary with the child than I would if I were just, hanging out with them in a friend kind of situation. I don't want that child to see me as the friend. I want that child to have a sense that this place is a little different. They're trying to figure out what the rules are, and that this is a structured interaction where I am the authority figure. That's going to give me a little bit of leverage in creating a bit of mystique around the lessons and also setting a tone where they're on my terms instead of me being on their terms. Something else that I like to keep in mind when working with a young child is I want there to be a pretty rapid turnover from activity to activity in the lesson. I really need to have all of my activities organized before the start of the lesson. I want to take just a minute or two to think about, what do I think I'm going to do in this lesson with them, and have all of my ducks in a row, have all of my materials organized, have all of the supplies ready to go. And I want to transition pretty quickly from activity to activity. When they start to squirm or wiggle a little bit in one activity, that's when I know that it's time to pivot to the next activity. Another thing that I can do when I see that they're starting to lose attention to get just a little bit more, burst of energy or a little more concentration or kind of get the wiggles out is in the middle of the lesson, if they're kind of starting to lose it a little bit, we will do 10 jumping jacks, or we'll just do something fun that blows off a little steam, and that burst of kinetic activity gets their blood flowing. It gives them a chance to get the wiggles out, and then they're able to come back and do some more sort of quiet, focused concentration. So I try to watch their body language, and I really want to work within their attention span, and I as the teacher have to know when they're done, and I try not to really push that. It's better to go ahead and end when they're at the end of their attention span instead of trying to push it a little further, and now they're getting tired and upset and they're not absorbing information well, and they have the experience that that whole lesson is dragging on when it's really just that I went about 2 minutes longer than I should have. It's better to just cut it off when you're still on a high note. Anything else, you can save it till next week. One of the mistakes that I made when I was starting off as a teacher is I wanted to be very supportive of my students, and I had this sensation that they were very fragile and that I needed to be very supportive of them and never tell them that they were doing anything wrong. So instead I would say things like, try it this way, or maybe it would sound a little bit better if you did this. And those are great things to say to a high school student that you're wanting to move to a more collegial plane. But with a young child who is very concrete in their thinking and whose language is much simpler, it's actually doing them much more of a service to just be totally direct. Like, this is the wrong way to do it, and this is the right way to do it. They're fine. Their ego can handle it. It's much simpler to say that. It's much more efficient. And, part of what you're bringing as the teacher is you do have the keys to this world that they want to be a part of. They want to know how to play violin, and you are their access to that. So it's totally legitimate for you to say, here's the right way to do this. And they're really ready to receive that information because they want to sound like you sound. Sometimes when misbehavior happens in a lesson, it's actually just because the expectations haven't been made clear. So a story that a teacher colleague of mine told is that when a child was rolling around on the floor in her lesson, the teacher said, "Darling, in violin lesson we don't do that." And the child looked up and said, "Okay, Miss Sharon." And she got up, and that was the last time that she did that behavior. So you really want to make sure that you have established those rules of the violin lesson and that they're presented as rules, and that you set clear boundaries around what happens if the child doesn't follow the rules. A child is really testing their world, they're figuring out what things do, they're figuring out how the adults around them work, and those rules are part of what teach them how things work. And so if you haven't taken the time to make those rules explicit, then you're not going to have a child who really understands what it is that you're looking for. Working with children compared to working with adults, you're going to have a much higher energy level. And if you watch someone who's really good at working with children and you don't have a lot of experience doing that, it can look really intimidating, that they're very excitable and exuberant and fun and being silly and being really imaginative, and that's something that can seem really hard to put on, and it might feel really fake. But here's a way that you can look at that might help it feel a little bit less fake and a little more authentic. Children live in a magical world. If you think about the experience of being a child, they've been on the planet for a couple of years. Everything that they're doing in their life, they're doing for the first time. Everything that they're tasting, they're tasting for the first time. When they first taste a strawberry, it is a mind-blowing experience because they've never had that flavor before. So it is so intense and so vivid for them. And they're having those kinds of experiences all the time. Now, as adults, we've now been on the planet 30 years, 40 years, however long, and we've kind of already had all of those experiences, which means that life is way less exciting. So it's not necessarily that we're not naturally as exuberant or naturally as excited. We're just not going around and having all of those first-time experiences the way that they are. So if you can get into that world where everything is new and vivid and it's a discovery, and have kind of have a sense of that curiosity that they're bringing into exploring this brand new place, then it's actually not fake at all to be excited with them, because you're just being in their context instead of being in your context. And they live in a magical world and you can join them there. And that's one of the reasons that people really fall in love with teaching small children, is because you get to re-inhabit that world and you get to enjoy it all over again. Now, as they're studying violin, part of that journey is every time they do a new skill, that new skill feels really advanced for them. So as a teacher, I want to really empower that sense of, wow, like this is a major step that I'm taking today. Maybe they're learning a slur, like not a big deal, ASTA standards page 1, but for them it's not ASTA standards page 1. For them it's like, wow, this is a really like cool new thing and I've never done that before. What? You can put 2 notes on a bow? Like, I had no idea you could put 2 notes on a bow. And so I really want to create a sense of mystique about the skill, and often a sense that, you know, this is a really advanced thing that we're doing, and that's not inauthentic. I'm not blowing sunshine up their skirt. For them, that really is an advanced skill. You know, Reuben and Rachel is a really advanced song compared to Hot Cross Buns. So, you know, even if I'm saying that, you know, many times in a month, like, wow, this is a really advanced skill, like I'm really impressed that we're doing this together, that gives them room to be impressed with themselves, and that's totally authentic for them to be impressed with themselves, because those little steps they're little steps for us. They're not little steps for that 5-year-old child.